Suka Hublach, it looks like an anti-establishment, anti-war, 41-year-old comedian just became president of Ukraine against an incumbent, one of the richest people in Ukraine, and someone, of course, connected to George Soros. And this is why I want to make a video about why this is great and how the mainstream media, they're literally still continuing to talk about Russian collusion, but not with Donald Trump, with, of course, this anti-establishment, anti-war new president of Ukraine. We're going to get into that plus a lot more, but before we do, I want to thank everyone sincerely from the bottom of my heart for allowing us to exist with your donations on wearechange.org/donate. If it wasn't for your gracious, generous donations, we wouldn't be here, and we only are because of you. $5 a month means the world to us and keeps independent media alive, which sadly there's less and less of, since obviously there's a big bias towards the establishment mainstream media that, of course, promotes war and conflict and works for, special interests. Now, overall, I would say that this recent development, that this recent election win by this comedian is ultimately a step forward for Ukraine that many people have theorized was on the step of imminent collapse, especially financially, especially since the 2014 Maidan so-called revolution. That, along with corruption, has ultimately robbed the country of the majority of its wealth. Now, overall, I think that this new election win is a step in the right direction for Ukraine and a rebuke of a lot of the people who are weary of war and are weary of the economic hardship that has been brought onto them by, of course, the ruling elites that have failed them, not only with corruption, but just a complete dereliction of the duties of the levels of high office in that country. And that's why this man, who literally, he runs a show like America Has Talent, but for Ukraine, but a comedic version. And he also, the only thing he's known for is playing a fake president on a very popular Ukrainian TV station. But with no political experience at all, with none at all, he still represents an anti-establishment, anti-war, peace message that the Ukrainian people voted for by large. Now, these elections were very entertaining, to say the least. Even had a public drug test after Vladimir Zelensky was questioning the current then president about his drug use and alcohol use, which led to this public spectacle, as well as a challenge to a major debate in, of course, a huge stadium in Ukraine. And, of course, the 41-year-old comedian used social media and his wit, even pulling off a meeting with Emmanuel Macron before the actual Ukrainian president was going to meet with Macron, to his advantage, which, of course, created a lot of buzz, a lot of attention, which ultimately led him here. But it wasn't just these kind of entertaining spectacles that led to this, to what people are calling a landslide election. A lot of it had to do with, of course, the person he was running against, Poroshenko, who, again, by the way, was the country's richest person, the man who was ultimately put into power after what people are calling a coup d'etat, which he even referenced himself in 2014 after the Maidan revolution, where US, European, and NATO forces were supporting him, while the Russian forces were supporting the current then-president Yanukovych in power at that time, which led to, of course, a little proxy civil conflict that is actually still going on in the country. Not many people know this, but there are still bullets being shot in eastern and western Ukraine, the two sides fighting against each other because of this 2014 Maidan supposed revolution, which even Poroshenko called a coup, where, of course, international special interests were fighting against each other. The Western special interest supported Poroshenko and, of course, got him into power. And that's why we saw a lot of dealings with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, people like George Soros, of course, involved in that political system. There was also many allegations of money laundering against the then current sitting president Poroshenko, who, you could say this mildly, was also very aggressive against the Russians, even calling the Ukrainian separatists to be declared terrorists under international law, many times rejecting Russia's supposed peace plan, and publicly on the world stage calling for NATO to send in warships to, of course, confront Russia, even going as far as to threaten to declare martial law in his country, saying within hours to even demonstrate readiness for war to, of course, face off against the Western enemy, Putin and Russia. Just last week alone, we did a video about the corruption in Ukraine where Joe Biden was able to get his son a nice, highly paid job where millions of dollars were flowing into his son's personal account. And when a Ukrainian prosecutor said he was going to look into corruption charges regarding Joe Biden specifically told Ukraine to fire him or a $1 billion loan would not be given to Ukraine. And what did Ukraine do? Of course, fired the prosecutor and stopped this larger case around the corruption of Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, who was put into this lavish job that, of course, dealt with Ukrainian oil. And, of course, with all of those conditions, with many people going into the streets and complaining that things have actually gotten worse since the Maidan revolution in 2014 and the possibility of war still on the horizon with Russia, the people of Ukraine came out en masse and said, no, we don't want this. We'd rather have a comedian with no political experience at all, but is promising a peaceful resolution in that country and to end the east and west of Ukraine fighting each other in Donbass. And you think, wow, a people came together and decided this. This is amazing. This is great. This makes total sense. No, not for the mainstream media, not for some celebritards who are literally invoking Russia and talking about how allegedly, based on no sources, again, I haven't seen anything credible, that allegedly the Russian government is financing this guy. Spreading, of course, propaganda, unverified information, fear, just like this CBC article mentions here, how this all allegedly prompts uncertainty, how this man is just a political rookie. He has to face the big bad mother Russia, and how bad it is that he's coming from a place calling for peace and resolution and the ending of fighting, because, yeah, that's bad according to many of these supposed experts. Now, you may be wondering, what is going to happen when a comedian with no political experience at all gets into public office? You would expect a disaster, but this is actually not the first time that a comedian has won public office, as we have in another example that happened in Iceland with an article here by The Independent that is headlined, quote, "Have you heard the one about John Nahr, the comedian who saved Iceland from political and financial catastrophe?" I actually saw a documentary about John Nahr, and it was brilliant. And what this man did and what this man achieved during his time, especially after the big banker collapse, especially after Iceland was facing very uncertain economic conditions in their country. This is something that I believe how most likely comedians could do a way better job than, of course, establishment corrupt politicians. By the way, this documentary about this Icelandic comedian is called Nahr. It's actually very well done, and I definitely recommend you check it out sometime. And just like Jimmy Dore says, when politicians are a complete joke, people turn to comedians for sanity. And in my own opinion, the whole system is a complete and utter joke. Might as well give it up to some comedians to try to figure out how to run themselves, because, again, the system is ultimately built on, of course, making a joke out of you, taking advantage of you, taking responsibility away from you. So, hell, let's put people in that position that don't have experience in squeezing it and using it for their own personal benefit. And I think overall, this is a great thing. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. If you agree with my theory, or if you don't, I would love to hear your feedback. Thank you once again for supporting real independent media through WeAreChange.org/donate. Again, you guys have no idea how important just even $5 a month is, what it means to us, and how it keeps us running and still existing. It's been a very tough last few months. Last year, we lost money. It's not easy to admit this. And honestly, unless something changes, it's going to be hard moving forward, if we could even do that in itself. So once again, thank you, everyone donating, keeping us alive. Because you guys do that, I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.